This is the environmental awareness call with Dean Val and Dean Kevin. And we discuss the environment, what's going on with the planet Earth, where we have to live and survive. With the purposeful poisoning and polluting of the planet, we have to deal with this every day. And we're helping people become more aware of what's going on and what they can do. And a couple things that people are doing. Well, this is one thing, this is happening in Rosario, Argentina, a case study in the benefits of urban farming. We talked about this before, about using unused spaces in the cities to grow food, etc. In an effort to address the financial collapse of 2001, this is an old article, the municipal government of Rosario, Argentina came up with an ingenious plan to get the city's residents back to work. Officials partnered with 700 farming families to dedicate unused land in the city for farming. This not only created employment, but also encouraged urban farming and improved access to fresh local produce for residents. This week, the initiative called the Urban Agriculture Program was awarded the prize for cities from World Resources Institute, and it's not hard to understand why. 2 decades from its conception, the project has yielded 30 hectares of orchard parks and 15 hectares of agricultural family gardens. The gardens are located in every corner of the city, including abandoned brick factories, old dumps, and empty lots. This Greenbelt project amounts to a total of 700 hectares of agroecological production within the city limits. In addition to the urban farms, the city hosts many local markets where farmers can sell their goods to their fellow community members. These markets pave the way for artisanal blacksmiths, carpenters, textile producers to better reach consumers as well. The program has even helped improve equity and empower marginalized groups in Rosario. The high number of female urban farmers led to the creation of Farmer Women of Rosario, an organization for female farmers to support one another, and designated Biomercado Biomarket serves as a place for indigenous peoples, such as the Quam and the Moccabis, to sell traditional products. On top of the numerous social benefits, the program has also helped the city cut greenhouse gas emissions by localizing their food system, while an emphasis on organic practices purified the local water supply. The city now holds the title of the greenest city in Argentina. And goes on. So this is like an example of how people have used the unused areas. Every city could do this. And as I mentioned before, Kelsey and I tried to do this in Orange County. We went to the city council meetings and suggested this to the city council's members, and no one took us up on it. But look at all this, like 700 hectares worth of unused land has been used to grow food here in the city of Rosario in Argentina. So it's kind of cool that somebody's doing something. This other one I wanted to share was this guerrilla gardener. Guerrilla gardening is like just going out and planting something, again, in unused areas, plant seeds, saplings, anything, just to get things going in your area. You can do it at night, like this guy did. It's just, in places that, again, would ordinarily go to waste. You're doing something to improve the environment. Just an example of what you could do, anybody could do. Supposedly illegal, you can be arrested for planting flowers, but whatever. Okay, and then the other thing, we had this fellow on last week that does the tree planting from India, and I got this idea that I would do the same thing, but kind of tweak it a little bit, and start the New Trees project, let's say, and have a Facebook group, a website, and I would plant a tree and have 2 other friends plant a tree. Like I'd plant a tree, and then maybe you could help me with this, Kevin, maybe like post it somehow, like either on the website or Facebook somehow. So we have a list like, okay, Dean Val planted a tree in Baja, and it was like a jacaranda tree. And then below that, his 2 friends, Kevin planted a tree in England, a cedar tree in England, and my other friend, Tim, planted a cypress in Grants Pass, Oregon. And then we just go down, you see the list of people. Each person has 2 friends that they help get going, inspired to plant one tree. And those people get 2 friends to plant a tree, and just it goes on and on. So it's just a way of propagating this kind of tree planting idea. So I thought I'd just start something like that as well, because it's just, we need to do something. And like these people, the guerrilla gardeners and urban space people, I mean, they're doing something, at least something that's actively not just talking, but doing something. So maybe, do you have any ideas how I could set that up? Like have a list of like who's doing what and where? How that would be? Would be better on Facebook or a website?
I would probably make a combination. Probably initially have it as a Facebook group, but then have a link to a website, and then you could construct a sort of, maybe get a template where it shows almost along the lines of how you have family trees, where you have like the 2 parents and they have all their offspring, and maybe if you get that as a template, and you could
yeah, that'd be fun. And it's a tree, so it goes along with the environment. Perfect. Yeah, that'd be fun. If you could help set that up, it'd be wonderful. And we get this thing going, and we could spread throughout the world. It'd be fun to see who's doing what in all parts of the world, like this other fella. I'm still part of his group too, and I want to maintain other connections with other groups too as well. That we can start, NU trees, our own group, and it's related to what we're doing. Okay. And you had something interesting to share about tree stumps, silicon-based trees.
Yeah, this is all based on the ancient giant trees that once were prevalent throughout the earth, and evidence for their existence, as of course the controllers would have you believe that the evidence that is cited for the trees is just mountains and volcanic eruptions that have solidified, but of course they for a start, I mean, they look like tree stumps, a lot of them, like the Wyoming Tower, Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Mm-hmm. And with closer analysis, their structure, how they're designed, also the features of them do suggest they were originally trees. And so I did a little research, and I'll read out some stuff here. That the ancient forests were cut down just for timber in the 1800s may not be the only reason. The fact is that old trees work also as information storage, a database, like hard disks of files on the computer, the consciousness of the tree. Everything that happens on the planet, the trees do record it in their information database. The tree's current lifetime consciousness
memory body. A person with good enough sensitivity can just go to a forest and easily access any information about the period of time that a tree was living through just by touching the tree trunk. So firstly, imagine what 300 to 400 foot tall giant redwoods that are maybe up to 5,000 years old could reveal. But imagine further that if the giant trees of the past, the ones suggested to be up to 300 kilometers in height, had survived, and who knows how old they may have been, how many thousands of years they lived through, they would have an accessible, complete record of events of the planet Earth, at least that which they were aware of. Part of the controlling system is dependent on the managing of information and the providing of a history that is far from accurate, but that which we are given by the controlled official sources and systems. If there was anything that might contradict or challenge the official version of human history, that would be swiftly buried, eradicated, and destroyed. So this may well be part of the reason the giant ancient trees were destroyed, to stifle anyone's access to information the controllers wouldn't wish to be known. The book Legends of Crimea cites examples of where paleontologists around the world are digging up fossils of animals and plants not only in Crimea but also across the globe. There are also many museums around the world that are simply overwhelmed with petrified clover, animals, dinosaur pieces, etc. A seeming era in the past where animals, plants, and people all turned to stone, pointing to the reality of a silicon era where all life was silicon-based, as opposed to carbon as it is today. The California redwoods, giant as they were, hundreds of feet high, are not appropriate here, in that they weren't present in the silicon era, since they are carbon-based. Very apparent also, in that they are cut and sawed with standard tools, and silicon breaks axes and saws. Examples of the giant ancient trees are, of course, what have been officially labelled as certain mountains and other so-called lava eruptions from the past that had hardened to stone, such as the Devil's Tower in Wyoming. But also there is evidence of the giant trees from the Silica era. Petrified trees are scattered in the desert and also fenced in an open-air museum, an American national park in Navajo and Apache counties in northeastern Arizona that covers about 346 square miles, and anyone can visit this tourist area titled Petrified Forest National Park. as animals seem to turn to stone in grey and white pebbles, the trees turn into semi-precious stones. All our forests are young and do not grow higher than 30 meters. Our forests are now preserved in the form of American redwoods. There exist fossils of the Silicon era, including trees of gems. In regards to fossils of animals, the question raised would be, how can a frog be petrified instead of just rot, as it should be with an organic body? According to Wikipedia, the fossilization process occurs underground when the body is buried under sediments, but do not deteriorate due to lack of oxygen. We need some kind of natural disaster, such as a volcanic eruption or clay rain, to cover frogs and mammoths alike, where these sedimentary rocks together with air bacteria do not allow the body to decompose. In other words, the bodies stiffened and became compacted. According to scientists, organic material has become silica. A carbon body, under no circumstances, becomes a cobblestone ever. This official explanation was invented to conceal the Silicon era. According to the official version then, the trees died in an unfair battle against a neighbouring volcano 225 million years ago, and this story goes even deeper. The wood was not burned in the lava flame. They did not rot for 225 million years in the damp earth. But in spite of current knowledge in physics, chemistry, and biology, simply turned into gems. The trees you see in the petrified National Park forest were not broken, they were quite clearly sawed into sections. The question is, was it before or after volcanic Armageddon that trunks were neatly cut into sections? If so, then what brand of chainsaw did people have that could saw silica? The question arises, if someone staged this whole circus, why would they bring back and then scatter the trees of the silicon life forms? And it must be noticed how these scattered sawed sections in the national park seem to be of a size of tree that wouldn't be especially giant. After all, they are not comparable even with the redwoods of California that exist today. But in fact, these are not the trees, but the branches of giant trees of the Silicon era. And those trees are so huge that American redwoods beside them would be dwarfed. Devil's Tower in Wyoming was formed from molten magma that rose from the depths of the earth and stood in the form of elegant columns, according to Wikipedia. Stood in perfect hexagonal columns as much as 300 meters into the sky, a geometrical masterpiece, as just being the result of a lava fountain according to mainstream scientists. All columns are also hexagonal, incidentally, which indicates further that the Devil's Tower is one example from many of an ancient tree that was cut and only the stump remains. Why hexagonal? Because nature builds in this design. There are no identical snowflakes as an example, but they are a perfect hexagonal shape. Bees, too, instinctively know, or are in fact real awareness motivated, that the regular hexagon has the smallest perimeter among equal area figures, so this form can be filled efficiently. Building honeycomb, the bees instinctively try to make it possible for it to be more spacious while expending as little wax as possible. The hexagonal shape is the most economical and effective shape for construction. Tree stump fibers have a hexagonal shape, which strictly maintains its geometry throughout the length of the barrel, regardless of the size of the tree. The fibers do not differ from one another. They are not only calibrated over the entire length, but with respect to each other. Each fiber stump is covered with a thin shell, just like fascia, the connective tissue sheath, forming housings of muscle fibers. A fossilized shell in contact with wind and moisture will crack, peel, and fall off, and this is clearly seen for anybody who inspects the Devil's Tower, and is direct proof that the stump fibers consist of at least 2 different components, just as you would find with a tree. The fibers of the Devil's Tower do not go into the ground vertically, just like any tree would. They gradually bend to smoothly evolve into the root system. To estimate the height of a tree from the stump that remains, to do this, we use the formula where the diameter of the stump height is approximately equal to 1/20th of the entire tree. The diameter of our Devil's Tower stump, 300 meters at the base, then multiplied by 20, and we get the height of the tree at approximately 6 kilometers in height. I think at this point there is little doubt that the Devil's Tower in the United States is a giant tree stump from the Silicon era, with all the features of a conventional wood stump.
You stop to consider all the things we've been told here by the authorities, whether they're true or not. And this is just one example. Just all the systems of the world, all our reality could be thought of as fake or misrepresented. Science, space travel, education, history, geology, flat earth, all this. I mean, there's so many things that we've been told and led to believe that, we just have to assume this is correct because we've been told this way and it sounds good. Just like in religion, if you make it sound good, you got people's attention. And even in science, if it sounds good, it sounds logical, reasonable, they they got you. But here we have an alternative view here with this and with other things that if you really took the time to investigate, there's so much more beyond what you're being told. So this silicon, I'm just curious again, silicon, how do they explain it? That if it's not oxygenated, you know, oxygen breaks down the organic matter. If it doesn't have oxygen, if it's below the surface, somehow it turns silicon. How did you explain it, or how did the article explain away these silicon, like petrified forest areas? How were they created?
Yeah, well, I mean, based on what what seems to be so is, it looks very much as though life on this planet seemed to have transitioned from a silica-based life in general to a carbon-based. And I don't know what would have caused the transition. I suppose, as like anything, it's just consciousness making its decisions, and then it affects then what we would consider to be evolution. But and they would say then that all the fossils they find, all the older trees, all the fossils, all the dinosaur bones and such, they said is a result of natural processes whereby if it's encased and oxygen can't access decaying the carbon matter, then it solidifies.
And even turns a jewel, precious stones. I mean, how does that happen? Yeah.
They said that all these that even if something was to be solidified, why would it transition into semi-precious stones? And it seems to be a feature of silicon-based trees and plants that as they do die, they then seem to transform in that way. And there was no explanation ever given as to why that was so.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And we have amber in the Baltic states, Baltic countries, amber, petrified wood, supposedly. Little bugs in there sometimes and things, but the amber, very precious, semi-precious stone that's traded and used for jewelry, etc., ornamentation. That's something interesting too. But anyway, the whole thing, what we're told is like, it probably is just a distortion of what has been. So, you know, do your own research and wake up. You're being deceived. So that's kind of what we're doing here, is to help people see what's really going on. And this is just one little part, the environment, but there's so much more to this. So read Duane the Great Writer's books. He's all over Facebook and Google, and he's someone you can resource for information. He's a great source. He's a real guide that's here to help with the awakening process for everybody. And Dean Kevin here, new Kevin Smith YouTube channel, still on, right, Kevin?
Yep, just about. A couple more strikes, it'll probably be off.
Okay.
That's on there. Controllers don't want people to know about. They're using any excuse and justification to shut it down. Like the last video I put out, I don't know what in it that I included in it, but they said I was giving out medical misinformation. that was the basis for them shutting down that video and giving me a strike. So yeah, so probably eventually I'll be transitioning just to brand YouTube, I would imagine.
Duane, even the last Facebook groups he's put out has had warnings, caution, this is misinformation, you know, read at your own risk. So, and he's not even saying anything particular anti-religion or politics, but something in there was red flagged and there's a caution marker on it. So anyway, that's what we have to deal with here. But we're willing to face it, and that's what people have to do, face it. And can't hide from it, pretend it's not happening. So you become more aware by facing everything that comes your way. sing the NUUU. That'll help you face it. And it goes like this. NUUU. Do that during the day, 10 minutes before bed. You wake up and watch your dreams. And Kevin, you want to give him an example too?
Okay.
Okay, so that's our show, unless you have something else, Kevin?
Well, no, I would just I'll just put emphasis on the what I revealed in my research of how I mean, they would say that these the Devil's Tower in Wyoming and other similar structures were as a result of the lava coming up and then solidifying. But then, how would the lava come up and in perfect hexagonal columns? You know, I mean, what feature or function would there be that would facilitate that to happen? Surely, you know, with lava, it would just come up as a big mass and just solid, as you could imagine. But as that is the best evidence of why these are tree stumps, because they are consist of these perfect hexagonal columns that are all neatly packed together as you would find in a tree. So
Yeah, go out and do your own research. It's actually fun to investigate these things. Thanks, Kevin.